Hey guys, how's it going? This is Cyber Saloons. Today we're going to be going over Danmachi Season 3, Episode 5. I really enjoyed this episode overall, and I thought it did a really good job of building up tension for where the rest of the season's going to go. So, we pick up where we were last time. So, Dix and his group of adventurers have ambushed Reina, which is the big spider chick, and her little escort that she's trying to lead to a different part of the dungeon. Because the Xenos communities, they like to move from location to location just to make sure that they're not found out, and they have these little safe havens over the dungeon to where like they're not attacked by monsters or found out by humans. And we see in the last episode that Dix and his group, like, they were torturing a monster to draw Reyna in, and it worked, unfortunately. So we see that Reyna and Foe are kind of like the vanguard of this little escort. We see that Reyna is really strong, and we see that Foe is really strong because they're trying to protect the other monsters, because the other monsters are just getting slapped around by by Dix's group. We see that the little I'm trying to think what it is, the eagle looking like Pegasus looking thing is just getting like destroyed, and so are some of the other monsters. So we see that Foe is doing a good job at like trying to hold off like some of these adventurers, but unfortunately, like, Dix seems like he's pretty decently high leveled. I wouldn't say he's probably as high leveled as Ais is, but I think he's definitely a cut above to where Bell is, and we see him kill Foe, and of course everyone's upset by this, especially Ween, because we see, like, in the last episode, Ween didn't really want to go to like a different community, and Foe is trying to cheer her up, and so unfortunately he gets killed, and then we see like all the other monsters are kind of getting shit on as well, and so Reyna gets a really I thought she had a really good last stand, and she had a lot of really good moments, which is fitting. So she tries to take on as many adventures as she can. Unfortunately, she isn't enough for Dix. Again, I think Dix is pretty strong. I think it's very clear that he's decently high leveled, and some of the other adventures like cut off her leg, and we see we see that like a couple of the adventurers have been reading Monster Girls too much or watching Monster Girls too much, and they clearly have a fetish for the monster tag. So they try to like violate her before like they kill her, and Reyna like spits acid all over them, which I'm like, oh, okay, good. And then she like scratches one of them before they can try to do anything to her. And she does a really cool moment where she rips out her crystal so that like none of the Avengers can trade it in, or so none of them can use it, and she ends up killing herself. And when she dies, you see that she says, I leave the rest to you, Gross. Ween runs over to where Foe's corpse was, and then Dix kind of like knocks her out with a spear. So thankfully she's not dead, but still she's not exactly in a good position right now. So Gross unfortunately goes and finds the masker for himself. You see like armor and all the different weapons that like some of the escort have are just lying over the ground, and he sees that Reyna has been killed, and he's obviously really pissed. So Lids and his group come up, and we see that Gross wants to go kill them, obviously, because like Reyna was his friend, and like a lot of his brethren, and a lot of these Xenos have been killed that he knew, and he wants to go kill the group of adventurers that are responsible for this. And you see, he brings up the line that humans and monsters cannot coexist. Lids kind of brings up a point to where, like, if you do this, like, everything that we fought for will be for nothing. Don't do this. Not all humans are bad. And you see, he brings up Bell as an example, because Bell, out of his own will, like, tried to protect Ween and doesn't try to attack all like monsters and thinks they're good. And you kind of got to see that with Bell's party in the last episode too. Lids isn't having it. Oh, sorry, Gross isn't having it, and you see that a lot of monsters that were like on Lids' side, because Lids was kind of like like the pro-human kind of faction of like the Xenos, and Gross was kind of like the anti-human faction. And you see like Lids lost a lot of support, and some of the other monsters. You see like an orc and some of that beast that I caught this, the beast that escaped in Monsterphilia, like I'm not. It looks like the abominable snowman or something. I don't know, but that was one of the ones that went over to the other side too. I thought it looked familiar, but the one that kind of went rampant during the Monsterphilia episode in season one of those went over there too. So Gross is a pretty strong following now. Gross himself was already strong. I'm still curious to see, because Lids brought up in the last episode that Lids is the second strongest, but there's another one who went adventuring, or well, not adventuring, but went down into some of the lower levels. So I'm really curious to see like who that monster is, because we see that Lids is pretty powerful. So after like that group leaves Lids, we see that he still has a small following. He still has the Goblin, Arls, and he has Fat and Ray. So Latin Ray, sorry. And so I really like Arlos. I don't know why, but I really like the Goblin's design. He just looks really cool. And so we get a brief glimpse to where the 18th floor, which I'm pretty sure that's that floor. If you remember from episode season one, it's where that kind of safe zone is. It's kind of like that buffer zone, and you see the ones who tried to mess with the spider, Morena, like come out of the tunnel, and you see like all these other monsters are obviously really pissed behind, so they're probably invading that floor. And we get it like at the end we kind of get like a thing with Dix, and he's looking at Ween in a weird way. I'm like, Dix, you're walking on some thin ice, buddy. Like you better watch it. So that's what we got for the dungeon part. I'm really excited for where that's gonna go. On Bell's side, we see that Bell at the beginning of the episode, he's obviously he's got a lot on his mind for after seeing the Xenos community, and after they're all eating dinner, the Hestia Familia is, and he goes to the dungeon and he starts killing these wolf monsters, and he starts having like kind of second thoughts about it after he met Lids and all the other ones. He probably thinks that like, okay, like I'm killing these monsters because it brings up an interesting, like, if you know that like like a lot of monsters that were in these Xenos communities or once were like bad monsters. So Bella's probably thinking about it like, okay, like I'm killing them now, but like, and they're gonna remember this in their rebirth. So you can see he's having second thoughts about like doing like killing like these wolf monsters. So he starts, after he's done with the dungeon, he starts going up the steps, and of course he sees his crush. He sees Eyes, and Bell starts bringing up Eyes like, if you knew that like monsters didn't have emotions and kind of goals that were too different from ours, what what is your opinion on this? And she kind of gives the, I'm from Buenos Aires, and the only good monster is a dead monster. No, but she hates monsters, and it hasn't explained in the anime, but for those who've read the light novels, I'm pretty sure it's went into it a little bit, or maybe they glossed over it in season two. You see that Eyes has a deep hatred for monsters because at the end of season two, when Belle and her and Hestia are in that small village, she sees one of the dragon scales, and she is very visibly pissed. I think that it hasn't said it in the anime, but monsters basically, I'm fairly sure they killed Eyes' family, and so she has a really deep hatred. So it's not too surprising that she doesn't view monsters that way. And on top of it, I don't really blame Eyes too much. I mean, I don't think Eyes or the Loki Familia have really ever run into like a Xenos. I don't think so. She doesn't know. Like, I'm pretty sure if Eyes ran into like a Xenos, she she probably would have second thoughts, and I don't doubt that we'll probably see that later during the season. So on top of that, we see that the whole city itself starts to lock down because all the monsters in the dungeon are just going batshit crazy. And Bell, to no surprise, is selected for a mission. So he gets selected for a little Suicide Squad mission. So the we also get to see some of the other familiars like response to the lockdowns. We see Ikalos, and he is very much like a chaos factor. Like, he just thinks like I kind of stated in one of my previous episode reviews. He's kind of like a chaos factor. Like, he doesn't really give, like, he doesn't care like what his familia does, and so long as they basically create chaos, he just views like the situation as fun. So I'm really interested to find out more about Ikalos. And we see that Freya, the Mega MILF, she's definitely curious about what's going on because Ornos hasn't told her anything as well. I really hope they get some like of Freya Familia go down there as well. We know that Freya Familia is the strongest now, and I really like a lot of the members that are in Freya's Familia. They seem really interesting. Um, and on top of that, we see that who else is going down in the group as well. So Belle is selected, and then we see that Aisha is like she's going down there as well, and she goes to talk to Ryu. So this is interesting because when she's talking to Ryu, you kind of see she says that it involves Ikalos and it involves Evilus, which is some nefariously evil faction. Obviously, and the name kind of gives it away. So, if for those back in season one, I think this group, Arikelos himself, is connected to like what happened to Ryu's Familia and like her whole party. Because remember, they all got slaughtered by like another Familia. I'm pretty sure this is some way it's either connected to Ikelos or Evilus in general. So I'm really curious to know what happens with that. Or we hope we get a little bit more explanation of that. Both Aisha and Ryu are like complete badasses, so I'm really excited to see them just destroy people in the dungeon. So We see that Oranos and Fells are watching over the Eaglos Familia. They definitely know they're up to some shady stuff, and they're definitely keeping an eye on them. And Fells also notices that Lid's crystal, communication crystal, that he gave Lids, gets destroyed because he gives communication crystals to like a bunch of probably key members of the Xenos communities so they can stay in contact with them. And we see that Ornos also Ornos brings up a really interesting point. Ornos talks to the guildmaster about like shutting down the city, and he also brings up the fact that like the dungeon's not out of control because his blessing is still in effect. So I think Ornos' blessing, because he seems to be like kind of like the central figure when it involves Babel, the dungeon itself. I think not Ecolos, sorry, Ornos has like his blessing is to make sure it has something to do with like a control factor that's on the tower, to make sure that monsters like can't flood out into the world or don't actively start out like some kind of shield barrier maybe, because it's interesting that, like the guildmaster's freaking out because he thinks like all the monsters are coming out of the dungeon, and Ornos says that well, my blessing's still in effect. So we see that Ornos is definitely like a key figure into controlling the dungeon, to make sure stuff doesn't get out, and he's the one who gives Fells the order to start kind of like a suicide squad to go down there with Ganesh's Familia, because Ganesh's Familia is like has a big suppression team that's going down there, and that's how they're going to sneak Bell and some of the other ones down there. And I'm really glad we can see some of Ganesh's Familia too. They definitely look really interesting. I love Ganesha, so I'm really happy that we'll get to see more of him. Not just more of him, but I've always kind of wanted to see more of his Familia to see what they're like, because they have such a goofy patron. It was a really good episode. I think it builds up a lot of tension to where it's gonna where the rest of the season's gonna go. You got a massive suppression force going down there, and all these monsters are going crazy. And Ganesha knows. We saw this from the last episode. Ganesha's Familia knows about the Xenos, so they probably have a good idea of like kind of how to handle it. And then Bell's party is gonna go down there to try to find out like what exactly happened. I thought the episode was really good overall. We'll probably get a little bit more into Ecolos and like Dix and like what exactly they're trying to do, because it's basically like hinted at the beginning of the season that they're they're definitely building some spooky shit. I hope we get a little bit more into Evilus as well. I do think that they will explain that in a little bit this season. That probably has connected to Ryu as well, because it's very clear that whatever is happening with this group, Ryu probably has past dealings with them in the past. So that's what I thought of the episode. I thought it was really good. I'm definitely excited for the next one, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next one.